October 1st, 2025, 40 minutes. That's all the time the Southern Interagency Task Force, with support from the U.S. Navy, needed to turn a $45 million smuggling fortress into a drifting hulk of scrap metal. Time is running out. How can U.S. forces successfully prevent the target vessel's escape through the Caribbean Sea? In the previous 72 hours, Southcom forces had persistently tracked the smuggling vessel since it left the Venezuelan coast, using satellite intelligence and aerial surveillance to determine its route and expected delivery point. The target's every move was under control, ready for confrontation. 7:00 a.m., Caribbean Sea. The P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft operated as usual, but today their mission was to maintain aerial surveillance of the smuggling vessel from over 10,000 feet without being detected. At the same time, at the headquarters of the U.S. Southern Command, or Southcom, a lone white dot flashed defiantly on the electronic map. The ship was moving in a zigzag pattern to avoid commercial shipping lanes 72 hours away from its expected delivery point. 5 crew members were moving around the ship's deck while its cargo hold contained 1.5 tons of pure cocaine and a shipment of automatic weapons estimated to be worth approximately $45 million on the black market. The crew believed the vast ocean was their lawless playground, a perfect hiding place. They had made a fatal mistake. The target had turned off its automatic identification system, or AIS, attempting to become a ghost ship. But the problem was they couldn't fool the NRO reconnaissance satellite 300 miles away, which detected their location and transmitted critical intelligence information through a secure network to the tactical data link. Above the clouds, the $200 million submarine hunting beast, the P-8 Poseidon, continues to circle silently. It is a second set of eyes, a layer of continuous detailed surveillance flying at high altitude to avoid detection, using SAR radar to track precise movements and infrared sensors to detect increased activity on the deck, suggesting the growing unease of the crew. It seemed that one of the crew members had spotted a white streak in the sky, or perhaps their criminal instincts told them something was wrong. The target ship suddenly changed course and altered its route. The U.S. Navy's response was almost immediate. From the P-8's cockpit, the pilot reported over the radio, target zigzagging 5 degrees. They've smelled us. Captain Ramirez from Southcom Command Center ordered adjust orbit. Maintain 30,000 feet altitude to stay hidden. The invisible noose began to tighten. The 4 crew members on deck, their thermal signatures flaring with increasing movement, fear crept in. They felt hunted, but couldn't see the hunter. From the horizon, the destroyer USS Fitzgerald was approaching at over 25 knots, not to attack, but to herd. The Fitzgerald maintained a distance of 10 knots and moved faster, circling in a wide, calculated arc, forcing the smuggling vessel into a narrow corridor on the open sea, cutting off any escape route to land or shallow waters. At 7:10 a.m. as predicted, the smuggling vessel began to accelerate, burning all its power. From its zigzag course, the ship began heading straight ahead to conserve fuel for the point of contact. The crew attempted to send distress signals, but it was futile. The Fitzgerald had activated a low-power electronic jamming system, just enough to make them think their radio was broken. They still didn't know they were being hunted. They only knew they were isolated. Realizing the distress call had failed, the smugglers switched to Plan B, deploying a small commercial reconnaissance drone. Their objective was clear: fly high, determine the location and direction of the pursuing forces, and search for a possible escape route through shallow waters or nearby islands. However, this action was immediately detected by the P-8 Poseidon tens of thousands of feet away. Data from its sensors was continuously transmitted to the Fitzgerald's command center. A tactical decision was made in seconds. Instead of using kinetic weapons to shoot down the drone, the commanding officer chose a more sophisticated solution. A dedicated C-UAS team on the destroyer quickly deployed a handheld drone defender system operating within a range of over 500 meters, emitting a concentrated radio wave beam that disrupted the drone's control signal. The drone's control screen suddenly malfunctioned and shut down. Disconnected from its operator, the drone wobbled in midair for a few seconds before crashing into the sea. Their final attempt was neatly thwarted. U.S. forces continued to exploit their advantage. The P-8 Poseidon began dropping a series of acoustic buoys, also known as sonobuoys, which are 5 inches in diameter and 3 feet long. The goal was to record the distinctive sounds of the surface vessel's engines in the waters surrounding the ship. When floating on the surface, these sonobuoys had both surface radio transmitters and underwater acoustic sensors, allowing them to monitor any sudden changes in the ship's engine speed. At 7:25 a.m., as the operation entered its 25th minute, the situation escalated to a point of extreme tension. The distance between the USS Fitzgerald destroyer and the smuggling vessel was now only 2 nautical miles. After being completely disabled electronically, the ship still did not slow down. It seemed they still hoped the voyage would truly lead them to freedom, with $45 million enough to disappear completely. This stubborn silence felt like a direct challenge, forcing the U.S. Navy to demonstrate physical force. Would they throw the cargo overboard or ram headlong? The captain ordered a switch to armed warning phase. The P-8 Poseidon immediately emitted a series of warning sounds echoing across the sky, loud enough for the smugglers to hear. "This is the U.S. Navy! Stop the vessel immediately! We demand your cooperation!" On the foredeck of the USS Fitzgerald, the remotely controlled Mark 38 Mod 2 naval gun system caliber 25mm mounted on the ship received the order to fire. Its barrel was aimed directly at the moving target. Through the Aegis combat system, the parameters for a warning shot were calculated with absolute precision. The firing order was given with specific parameters, a warning shot with the target creating a water column exactly 50 meters in front of the target ship's bow. A barrage of 25mm shells flew out of the gun barrel at supersonic speed. Just as calculated, a white water column tens of meters high erupted right in front of the smuggling ship's bow like a giant punch from the ocean. The shockwave from the explosion spread out, hitting the hull hard, causing it to shake violently. The smugglers panicked. Immediately, they made the decision the U.S. forces had anticipated: discard the evidence. The crew frantically threw boxes of cocaine and weapons into the sea in a desperate attempt to cover their tracks. The ship's engines roared as they attempted one last burst of speed, but the ship continued to drift forward. On the Fitzgerald, the enemy's reaction was recorded and analyzed immediately. The order was to hold position ready for a second shot if necessary, but the top priority was no casualties. Instead of pursuit, the Fitzgerald employed a more effective tactic. The Aegis system, within just 5 minutes after calculating the smuggling ship's escape trajectory, mapped out an interception route using SPY-1D radar to lock onto the target with high precision. The destroyer only needed to move to a strategic position, a rendezvous point 1.5 nautical miles away, right on the suspected route of the suspects. The 9,000-ton USS Fitzgerald became an insurmountable physical barrier, its bow nearly perpendicular to the target's direction of travel. The smuggling vessel was now locked in place, forced to slow down and stop or face a catastrophic collision. Despite being blocked and facing the overwhelming power of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the smuggling vessel remained defiant to the end. The smugglers pinned all their hopes on the ship's remaining and final engine, searching for any tiny gap to slip through. They were desperate to escape or hopeless, but unwilling to give up. After a series of warnings by radio electronic signals and gunfire, it officially crossed the compliance threshold. At Southcom Command Center, the final order was given: disable the engines. This was no longer a warning, it was a deliberate enforcement action. Once again, the ship's Aegis combat system and fire control system coordinated. The target was not the entire ship, but a specific area at the stern where the engine room was located. There was no need to sink the ship, preserve the evidence. This time, a U.S. Coast Guard MH-60T Jayhawk helicopter from the High-Speed Interdiction and Reconnaissance, or HITRON, team approached. From the helicopter door, a highly trained gunner using an M2 Browning 50 cal machine gun aimed at the smuggling vessel's engine block. An advanced positioning system provided data on speed, distance, and wind direction, allowing the gunner to fire a series of accurate armor-piercing rounds. The 50 cal machine gun tore through the air. A series of deafening metallic clangs rang out, followed by a painful roar as the internal machinery pistons, crankshafts, and gearboxes were shattered by the immense kinetic force. A thick column of black smoke rose from the stern. The ship lurched to an almost immediate halt, its momentum abruptly destroyed, causing it to drift inertially a few meters before coming to rest on the sea. Its entire propulsion system was completely destroyed. On the deck of the smuggling vessel, the crew made no attempt to resist accepting their fate in despair. They were stunned by the collision and the abrupt halt. There were no human casualties, only destroyed machinery. Now was the time for the final blow. From the destroyer USS Fitzgerald, 2 RHIB speedboats were quickly launched, skimming across the water like black arrows. On each boat was a U.S. Navy SEAL team precisely equipped and trained for this situation. Accompanying them was a mobile law enforcement team from the U.S. Coast Guard. The approach was lightning fast. Within less than 60 seconds of contact, the LEDET and SEAL team members executed a flawless boarding. Not a single shot was fired. The suppression was accomplished entirely through close-quarters combat techniques, overwhelming command, and the presence of a highly trained force. A firm and cold command was given. This is the United States Navy and the United States Coast Guard. You are surrounded. Get down on your knees and put your hands in the air. After confirming that the entire ship was secure and there were no further threats, the order to search was given. The search was conducted systematically and meticulously. The LEDET and SEAL teams with experience from hundreds of similar operations quickly identified the contents: 1.5 tons of pure cocaine pressed into bricks, a large quantity of submachine guns, and no less importantly, encrypted documents. A crucial link in the Tren de Aragua's logistics and financial network had been officially broken. At 7:40 a.m., the 5 smugglers handcuffed behind their backs were escorted by the LEDET team to the RHIB boat. They would be transferred to the USS Fitzgerald for temporary detention. From there, they would be transported to a U.S. facility to face justice in a federal court. For them, the game was over. The vessel, after its engines were disabled, was deemed unrecoverable evidence and a maritime hazard. The final disposal order was issued: sink it on site. A Navy EOD team carried out the mission, installing and detonating explosive charges according to procedure to ensure the vessel was completely destroyed. The EOD team observed until the ship was completely submerged before leaving. The target had been permanently neutralized and removed from the combat zone. The success of the operation did not lie in a single type of weapon or an individual heroic act. It was the result of a perfectly orchestrated symphony, a chain of destruction in which each link functioned without a single flaw. This action was not just a simple drug bust. It carried greater strategic significance, a message sent across the Caribbean Sea. This sea is one of the world's most important maritime arteries, with about 15% of global trade passing through it. Ensuring the security of this route is a top priority. Furthermore, this operation serves as a stern warning demonstrating the United States' resolve following new sanctions imposed on Venezuela from 2024 to 2025, which have forced criminal organizations like Tren de Aragua to seek illegal funding sources more recklessly. 3 days of pursuit, 30 minutes to tighten the noose. A perfect takedown. For the Tren de Aragua gang, it was a day of doom, a nightmare in the open sea where they once thought they ruled. For the U.S. Navy and its partners, it was just another day at sea, but one that demonstrated America's strength and reaffirmed its vital role in ensuring maritime security. Goodbye and see you again. See you.